tiny clause.
This is not one
sentence.
tiny clip, Sam.
Well,
you don't know.
wait
This is a
second.
totality of behavior.
But you wanted
and by
to
the
bring
way,
this
it's
up.
easy,
I don't
and I
care
appreciate
about
that you
Ethan.
can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this
You're saying it
conflation.
doesn't. You're saying
this
actually
conflation.
I'm wrong
saying,
for caring
I'm
about
saying,
it.
No, yes. In fact, I'm saying this conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Can you see? Can you see that?
Did he get married?
Well, I think he's attending a wedding.
Okay.
And he's very formally dressed, except he appears to be wearing a beanie.
I would. I'm aware of his beanie attachment.
This is not fair. This is unfair debate tactics right from the jump, all right? And this is disarming. Obviously, we all want to align and join in laughing at this, but come on.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was a fine look for our good friend Tim Pool there. Very good.
Nice suit.
Yeah. So well, let me ask you this: what have you kind of like heard about me? Because I mean, I know that your colleagues have an opinion.
I got to be honest with you. I have not heard much. I have, like, you know,
Sam doesn't have internet.
The only thing I really
like
saw that came up in any of my mentions on Blue Sky, I'm also on Blue Sky, is just this issue about talking to me, and I had presumed that was it. But I don't, you know, like, look, from my perspective, I'm not, you know, and I know that there's been, you know, you mentioned in the email that there's been a lot of grief that you have taken, and I know that other people have also taken grief on all sides of this. And you know, the personal aspects of this, and you know, I don't believe that people. I don't actively attempt to deplatform people. I don't think people should do that. I don't think people should be swatted, or tried to be fired, or whatever, or have CPS sicked on them, or any of that. I mean, I just don't think that's appropriate. I mean, I'm more interested in talking about my relationship to Zionism and my perspective on what Israel is doing, and what is happening in Gaza. And
he cares so much.
I totally agree. Let's just talk about the facts. Let me start by showing you this clip. So I've been actually talking about my feelings on the Israel-Gaza Palestinian dispute situation for a long time. I lived in Israel for 5 years as well when I was with my wife early on. Here's my position right after October 7th. And you can tell me if you have any... if you have any comments on any of my positions here. But this was this was from our episode a few days after October 7th. Yeah. Liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most, like, radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're...
Like, right after Sam was like, I'm really interested in just, not talking about all the ancillary stuff that's happening and just getting to, my own personal perspectives on this matter so we can talk about it. He's like, yeah, I totally agree. That's what we should do. So here's a clip of the show that I used to have with Hasan talking about this issue.
Building, the chances that you're killing children is pretty much 100%. Okay? It's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting. I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead, like, 5-year-old daughter. I mean, I don't need to watch this part because it just gets a little too emotional. But I mean, so that was my take right after October 7th. And obviously that was coming off the end of me being like I'm an Israeli citizen The morning of October 7th, me and my wife were up at 3 a.m. as families were calling into news stations from their safe houses, people being burned alive with their families being murdered while on the phone with news. So coming off of that emotional shock, right, was this was my reaction. Now, I don't know if there's something Zionist or pro-Israel I said there, but maybe I don't understand.
I mean, I might, I think much of what you said was true. I'm not sure, frankly, if what we've seen Israel do in terms of Gaza is not broadly supported in Israel. I'm not seeing the body politic. I mean, I was doing a lot of interviews with Israeli reporters earlier in 2023 about the protests against what Netanyahu was doing with the judiciary. And there was a question as to whether Israelis would see that this autocracy that Netanyahu was attempting to sort of impose on the country wasn't an extension of what was happening in places like the West Bank and in Gaza in some fashion, and more so the West Bank at that time. And so I think it's hard to make an argument. And look, I would make it's not a perfect analogy as to what's happening in this country, but when you talk about the Israeli population not having a problem with what's going on in Gaza, I don't see a lot of evidence of that. There's certainly, I would imagine, a percentage of Israelis, and I know some of them who think that Israel should stop its assault there, but I don't think I don't see a lot of evidence that a year and a half later, after you said those things, that this is not the character of the vast majority of Israeli society. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced that they are as aware. I mean, I've talked to people who have reported in the West Bank, and they said they would go from the West Bank into Israel, and the lack of awareness of what was happening in the West Bank by Israelis was shocking to them. So, I can't say if the Israeli population had a full understanding of what was happening in Gaza, that they wouldn't change their mind. But I don't see a lot of evidence of it.
So as you touched on, this was made basically before the war started. And I think that the unfortunate, really tragic outcome of the war is how much it's jaded
and
radicalized, I think, people in Israel. It's really, I think people in Israel feel like isolated. They feel like, the sentiment in Israel is basically that the world wants, the country to disappear. And obviously, like, that's a much more nuanced conversation, but the feeling there has definitely radicalized a lot since the war started. It's gotten a lot worse.
And I think, I think that gets to it to some extent. I mean, you have this wholesale slaughter. I was looking up, we killed in Iraq, depending on what numbers you want to look at, but I think it's safe to say directly hundreds of thousands of people. But even like the number of children that we killed in Iraq, I think has been surpassed by what's happened in Gaza. And I think one of the things that I find shocking is that the sense, and look, I experienced this with family members, where the sense that there's a victimization, for instance, let's say on college campus of Jewish students, and I think that to look at what's going on, the totality of what's going on, and to perceive the victims of what's happening here, to be the Israeli citizenry or Jews in this country, I think it just blows my mind. I mean,
well, two people can care about two things at once. Why should people?
Oh, absolutely.
People,
absolutely.
People who are uninvolved in the war, if they're being like victimized in a separate situation because of their Jewish identity, that's a problem, don't you think?
Oh, I do, but
and you can care about two things. You can't be like, oh, these people are ridiculous for caring about anti-Semitism on college campuses because the war's happening. I mean, both we can care about two things.
100%.
And obviously, one is way worse, right? One is way worse.
But that's the point.
Yeah,
that's
one
kind
of the danger of
and what's happening in Gaza.
Who should tolerate being discriminated against based on their identity? You know what I mean? Like, of course, who wouldn't react to that?
I don't think that people are. I don't think that people are being victimized. I mean, certainly, listen, anti-Semitism is real. It was real when I was a kid. There was many times I had pennies thrown at me growing up and playing basketball. I mean, there was a lot of. I've experienced anti-Semitism, but I would put it in the context of like you're a parent, I'm a parent. If my kid is going through something very difficult, it's obviously difficult for me, but it's more difficult for them. And it's a question of prioritizing these things. You can have two thoughts in your head at the same time, but to center oneself or to perceive that one's victimization is sufficient to ignore the
I got to stop you because I don't think I don't know who's doing that.
Well, I mean, I just said like you just presented as the Israeli population feels like
you gotta let Sam finish that sentence. What he was trying to do is put it all in context, and he's doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. He's very calmly and rationally trying to convince Ethan or at least try to have a civil conversation is more important than getting a dig or getting hey, by the way, you just got owned. You're factually incorrect in this debate. He's trying to humanize the situation and be like, I understand. Obviously, there's a strong concern for racism and anti-Semitism, and I've experienced it firsthand and all that kind of stuff, and those are very real things in the real world. What we're talking about here are two things, though, that I don't think is fair to make them equatable, where you have one faction that is obviously trying to stand up for something that is institutional backing and power. People are being arrested simply for speaking out against the genocide, and in the other case, there are very real issues and very real cases of anti-Semitism that occur in the United States, but those are being watered down by fake cases of anti-Semitism simply because people are speaking out against the state of Israel.
Isolated and this and that.
There's two different separate conversations. There's like the American Jewry who's like, I have nothing to do with that place. And then the Israelis, right? So like when you're talking about in
terms of the way that you characterize the Israeli feeling, was that they feel isolated, et cetera, and I can understand that, but to not have the first thought of like we are committing, like you say, genocidal acts. And if people want to call it genocide, I don't, obviously it's got to be, it's a legal term, but I think that it's colloquially speaking, at the very least, it is a genocide. And to not recognize that as the fundamental issue, the first issue, I think is blinkered. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's a little gobsmacking to me.
Well, so I do agree with you that obviously in Israel, people, I think the problem, and just to say on a higher level, I agree with you. Like obviously the people in Israel compared to like what's on October 7th, they were victims. After everything that's happened, obviously whatever they've suffered pales in comparison to the mass destruction and like wanton death of civilians in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank too. Lots of awful stuff. That being said, I think the problem with Israel, just to try to explain what's happening there, because I do agree with you, is just like the media apparatus and the feeling that they have there. It's like there's not a lot of space emotionally
mainstream
and like
media
even the information that they're consuming. I think
Israel using passive voice
that would allow them to have
justification for war crimes,
kind of like self-realization. And like you said, a lot of Israelis don't know what's happening
there are some. I mean,
there are some. Yeah, of course, there's some.
What was it in the fall? You had the publisher of Haaretz, speaking out about what was going on there. And the paper was essentially, a cutout, or there was an attempt by the government to basically shut them down on to some extent. I mean, so
Well, so what's your
yes, I think
explanation
that,
why Israelis don't care? It's not that they're evil, right?
well, I think, look, there's I'm sure that there is a mass, sort of like a failure to deal with trauma. But I think some of it is, frankly, is a racism, and I think, how can you explain? How can I explain how I just watched a clip of people at a Trump rally chanting "USA, USA," to watching a video of people being, taken into that prison in El Salvador and having their heads I mean, I don't know how I can explain that. So I don't know how I could explain how the Israelis are able to the extent that they can see what's going on in Gaza, have that reaction. But I know that it's wrong.
This could be really productive if there can be an association with fascism internationally, or even far right extremism internationally. Maybe that's what it'll take for especially a lot of remaining liberal Zionists and pro-Israel supporters to recognize what is taking place and start to create a schism, which would be very beneficial as well. Between, hey, by the way, if you're going to be pro-colonization, if you're going to be pro-genocide, then that is exclusively something where you are supporting a far right fascistic government in another country. It doesn't matter which country is committing it. It doesn't matter which country is doing an apartheid state in which there is a second class of citizenry. You need to oppose that in all its forms. That that could also be very beneficial.
And I think some of it undoubtedly is a racism. Some of it is maybe some type of mass failure to deal with trauma. I mean, I don't know all those things. I think part of it. I think there's some of the makeup of immigrants to Israel over the past several decades. I'm sure all of that enters into it, and I'm not in a position to sort of be able to psychoanalyze it beyond this sort of vague notions.
Sure.
But
yeah, and I agree.
From my perspective, it's gobsmacking, and to me, it has shown, and I never identified myself as a Zionist as a kid or through the years, and I never identified myself as an anti-Zionist. I don't think I think those it wasn't really until someone heard me articulate my perspective on this that they referred to me as anti-Zionist, and I have I don't really care one way or another how I'm labeled, but to me, it shows a failure of that system of government that Israel has, and it has failed both from a perspective of what I think some people had as a notion of Zionism in the 19th century. It has been a failure in terms of keeping Jews safe, frankly. It seems to me to have been a massive failure. And so I can't operate as someone who lives in Israel, but I can operate as someone who is an American in terms of what we support, which is why I think we should end all aid. And as a Jew who sees my religion being used as what I perceive as a fig leaf for what Israelis or Zionists are doing, and so that's where I'm coming from with this. That I don't know if there is a psychological state that can justify this. In fact, I don't think there is, and so
it's just an attempt to understand, not justify, because I mean, it is what it is, right? It is the way that it is, and so that's for a reason, and it's just trying to explain it. That's all. I agree with everything you're saying, but actually, one thing I want to pivot to and ask you about.
Do you think that we should cut all aid to Israel?
I think that'd be justifiable, yeah.
And
we're talking about military and stuff. Yeah, for sure. Israel can make their own bombs and shit.
Every
if they need, they don't need American military. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think they do need it to do what they're doing, without a doubt. And
well, what I mean is they're not entitled to it, to say more accurately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think military aid should be cut for sure until.
As a Jew, and you know, I mean, obviously you have a different connection to Israel than I do, as you know, through your family and whatnot, and through having lived there. But as a Jew, I take such offense to what is being done ostensibly to protect me and my family and my ancestors and my progeny and all of it. It is, I mean, I think it's, I think the conflation of Zionism and Judaism is both not keeping Jews safe and is wrong at its core. And we can see what it's even doing in the context of this country, the way that it's enabled Trump and to attack universities and to attack law firms and whatever. And so I don't know. And if you agree with that, great. If not, I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why, like, this chasm started between me and, you know, Hasan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is...
I don't want to have to be the one to say this, but it does really sound like Hasan was right here, as in this is an incredibly productive conversation, and then there seems to be a lot more agreement. And I think the term like aid is a little more vague. I mean, I think you could actually start saying, should we impose a two-way arms embargo? Yes, that would be a very necessary step. Should we, start moving towards, properly putting terms and conditions on any country that is currently engaged in apartheid until they end such apartheid? Should we start divesting from companies that are willing to invest in a country that is engaged in apartheid and genocide? Things like that would take a little bit further, but...
An enemy of the movement for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality. For example, one of my criticisms of his is his not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, Gaza at the Riviera with Trump hotels. I mean, that I understand why they didn't. I totally understand the perspective. Like, I'm so disillusioned with this administration, I can't support Kamala. But at the same time, like, a hugely influential political streamer like Hasan, who has a huge influence on people, I think, and who's someone who who's very vocal about being pro-Palestine. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally, but either way, he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her. Now,
what does this have to do with the topic?
If you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote, that's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer, and you know, basically you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils and what that means, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
I mean, I certainly have been
talk shit about
critical.
Hasan. Come on, Sam, you have to. This is what you're being set up for.
Generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils, but I think, and certainly, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly, that was my perspective. But again, what the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability to signal that there would be any change,
I will not be silent. Do you remember
sometimes
that?
you have to take this at face value. And I think there would be certainly, definitely other things. You would not be assaulting the government like Trump is. But, I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing this, and I think it's been 5 elections now. I mean, I'm old, that I couldn't really condemn someone from taking that position based upon what we were seeing. I mean,
it's not just some random person. I do, and I'll tell you why. Kamala Harris
Sam specifically said that he wanted to stick to speaking about his own personal experience and talk about the issue at hand, which is, the genocide of Palestinians. And he doesn't really know a lot about internet drama. That's not his field of expertise. They cover it sometimes, but this is going to be, an opportunity for them to have a conversation surrounding that topic. But instead, it keeps getting pulled back to, I just want to say, I don't know how much you hate Hasan for not voting for Kamala or supporting her openly with this platform. He's got a massive platform, but then who did he really vote for? I don't know. Cenk? Did he vote for Cenk? Is that what we're talking about right now? Is that important to the topic at hand?
Wanted a ceasefire. She stated that. Trump said, finish them. I mean, let's be honest. Like, for someone
Biden
like Hasan,
said, I want a ceasefire.
I'm not voting
too,
for Biden. I'm not talking about Biden.
No, I understand, but we found out that Biden, in fact, did nothing to bring that about. So,
well,
you
can talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. What she said.
She's
the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president, said he wanted a ceasefire. She, as a candidate, said, I want a ceasefire.
Well, do you not? But even if you're like, I don't know how much I trust them. One's like, I want a ceasefire, and the other one is like, finish them.
Well, listen, I think it was certainly obvious to me that Trump was going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate to show some indication of this, I can understand that. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would disagree with it. But
yeah, I get your point too. Like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like it feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice. And I think, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump, but they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion. But, I don't.
And also, instead of getting mad at the people for not doing the trolley problem to your liking or being just too revolted to even want to participate in that election, you should be getting mad at the administration who was unwilling to listen to anything. Like, their own constituents, the majority of people who were being polled on this topic, numerous scholars, human rights organizations. Like, it was not as if it was like, they had no idea that this could be something that, like, decidedly turns people away from the polls.
I don't know what the point of litigating this is per se, but
well,
exactly.
We're talking about kind of my criticisms of Hasan and how this.
I don't.
Well, let me show you this.
I don't care.
Yeah,
about,
I know.
Honestly, I'm like
Let me show you this. This is more.
Not, I honestly. Like,
yeah, you don't care. I know.
I don't care. I don't.
And why should you? I don't blame you. We talked about anti-Semitism, and you think
we're going to do it again.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, right?
I want to bring it back to Hasan.
You seem to have conveyed that, compared to the destruction and everything happening, the genocide, the loss of life in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that obviously that's way more important. So let me show you an example of something. And again, I know you don't care about the drama. To me, this isn't drama.
Oh my God,
this is one of the biggest, most influential streamers. Spreading something that I think is really dangerous, and you can agree or disagree. But
so I understand completely. You want to focus this, and you want to make this about the issue, which is way more important. Obviously, we're talking about the genocide of an entire people, so that's what we should concentrate on. So I know you don't want to talk about drama. So if you would just please bear with me 1 second, we need to pull this back and talk about something really important, which is, again, the drama, which is really important that we bring up right now. I want to show you something. Sorry, it's not drama. Technically, this is still related to what we're talking about.
It's a short clip, but I'll show it to you, and you tell me what you think.
Okay, yeah.
This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting. If they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone that's had positive feelings at any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not
That's
fit
not what he
to
said.
be a
He
dog
used the term
walker.
Zionist
Now, to me,
specifically.
that seems like extremely dangerous, dehumanizing language about what could arguably be 70% of the Jewish diaspora, and certainly probably people you know in your family.
I'll tell you, there's some hyperbole there, but
That's putting it mildly.
I mean, he says Zionism, and I'll tell you what I think is really.
Sorry, I got to correct you. He says Zionism, and then he says if you had positive feelings about the state of Israel at any point in your life.
I got to tell you, if you look at what's happening right now, and you have positive feelings about Israel,
He said at any point in your life, Sam. Just to be clear about what he said.
Would I have said at any point in his life, someone's life? But I just think this is such a petty, like the idea that we're going to police. Hold on, let me respond.
ahead.
You want me to respond this?
No,
I
go
don't.
ahead.
Like I say, I don't care about this. But if you're going to force me to respond to it, what Israel is doing right now is so far beyond the idea that someone says any time in your life or not or whatnot. He's talking about Zionism.
Oh, fucking thank you. Thank you. People, I mean, like, this is so necessary. We need to start. Can we just recontextualize this? We need to contextualize this. But, like, no, but please, I think what he's saying could be perceived and interpreted to be pretty intense, if I'm being honest, right? It's like, what are we talking about? What are we comparing? Some random streamer on the internet making comments about a government that is currently engaged in a genocide. Like, come on.
And frankly, I think it's very difficult for me to understand how someone could have positive feelings at this time. Now, you want to say in the past and what? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I say, I will grant you at any time in your life that is too broad a step. But wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
But see, you go in and you're making this about anti-Semitism by doing this hopscotch about a poll that people had positive feelings that Jewish people do, and then therefore he is anti-Semitic. And honestly, that type of conflation, I think, is so dangerous and so disingenuous. I mean, I don't want to get too passionate about this, but I will tell you something. I have had a guy who went to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bar mitzvah, my kid's bar mitzvah, sat at Passover with me 3 or 4 times, call my father and ask him if I'm anti-Semitic. Now, this is just one, that is just an example, an illustration of conflating when he's clearly talking about Zionism. Was it hyperbole to say any time in life, whatever? The fact of the matter is this conflation is dangerous for Jews. It is a fig leaf and a way of weaponizing anti-Semitism that has enabled Donald Trump to do the shit he's doing, that has enabled the slaughter of thousands upon thousands of children and women and men, for that matter. It is not keeping Israelis safe. And this type of conflation, Ethan, is what I find far more irresponsible, frankly, than the idea that he said positive any time. I mean, look, you do a show
Sam,
4 hours a day.
Incredible.
He does a show 5 or, as far as I could tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is not one
sentence.
Tiny clip, Sam.
Well,
you don't know.
This
is a totality of behavior.
But you wanted
and by the
to
way,
bring
it's
this up.
easy,
I
and I appreciate that you
Ethan.
can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this
You're saying
conflation.
It doesn't. You're saying
this
actually
conflation,
I'm wrong
saying,
for caring about it.
No, yes. In fact, I'm saying this conflation is incredibly dangerous. It is disingenuous.
I think it's dangerous
right now,
to ignore what's being described as dehumanizing, violent language for American Jews that have nothing to do with the war.
That is a complete mischaracterization of that.
It's not.
He's
not fit to be a dog walker.
He never says the word Jews.
He says that
Listen. How many members of Kufi have positive feelings towards Israel? Wait. How many millions of members of Kufi, the Christian organization, have positive feelings for Jews? It is clearly not a function of their Judaism. It is not a function of their Judaism, and so it is not.
But it describes most Jews.
No.
Yes, it does, Sam.
It describes most Christian evangelicals too.
It may do them too, but it also describes 73% of Jews.
That is not anti-Semitism. That is about
I don't
a
know. What do
belief.
you call it when somebody's discriminating against the vast majority of a racial or religious group, Sam?
I'm sorry. You want to look at evangelical Jews?
I don't care about evangelical people.
Okay, but I'm talking about the way you're constructing this.
I think
and so
you're.
you can say the same thing about Christian evangelicals too. It is not anti-Semitism. It is not. It just isn't.
Like, taking one example in isolation, which is what we've done here.
Well, you're the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, well,
I don't even want to talk about
fundamentally,
it,
I disagree
but I'm
with you.
using your example, and in that instance, that is
so
not
good.
anti-Semitism.
Well,
And
I
this
disagree.
Conflation. Okay, well, that's our disagreement.
Yeah.
But I think that conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Well, I
It's
disagree
dangerous
as well
for
on that.
Jews.
I think-
it's dangerous for this society.
I think, frankly, I think it's dangerous to what I perceive as hand waving what is happening here. I know you said you aren't doing
I'm
that.
not hand waving.
Yeah, no, you're doing the
No,
opposite.
he's doing the opposite. He's calling it out specifically and saying how dangerous it is to keep associating people who are actually anti-Semitic, who go into their own category. You're Nick Fuentes, people who hate Jewish people simply for being Jewish, and people who are criticizing the government of Israel, and the fact that that is done in a larger part by Christian nationalists in the United States than any other group, and how dangerous it can be to consistently try and associate every single thing that the Israeli government does with all Jewish people. Yeah, it's quite the opposite.
You're endorsing
decades of thought about this.
So right, sure. But the point is, you're saying that this is not dangerous. How dare you care about this? I think it's dangerous
No,
to.
I'm not
No,
saying
he didn't
that
say
at
that at
all.
all.
I personally, I mean,
I'm
Jewish
saying
people
the
have a collective
mischaracterization
memory of
of
trauma,
it as
Sam, and it
anti-Semitism.
starts a certain way, and it starts with people. It starts with dehumanizing language, like saying you're not fit to walk a dog. I mean, what are we
He's
doing
not
here?
talking about
It's
Jews.
irresponsible language.
He's not talking about
He's
Jews.
talking about 73% of Jewish
no,
people.
No, you said that.
No, that's a poll
Yes.
that's readily available.
No, you made that connection. He did not. Because we have millions upon millions of members of Kufi. We have millions upon millions in this country of evangelicals who also believe the same thing.
Does your dad
and
have-
You cannot say
could
it's
you just-
anti-Semitism.
could you
You
describe
cannot
your-
say it's anti-Semitism if you're also including millions upon millions, far more Christians than Jews.
Would you say that your father, who you mentioned, said something to you, that he's ever in his life had positive feelings about the state of Israel?
I've had positive feelings of Israel.
Well, does your dad have any positive feelings about it now?
I would assume so.
Not in terms of like I support them, but
I've
like
had
I think
positive
Israel.
feelings. I went to Israel
Okay, good. Then you're a neo-Nazi,
my
not fit to walk a
confirmation.
dog. How do you feel about
No,
my
that's
God.
you saying that.
that? That's
is not
literally
what
what he
I'm
said.
saying.
I'll play it again.
No.
I think like this will never
Please.
happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Another thing he's doing, by the way, and Hasan does this.
Listen,
He
you can
plays
say
around with
that's
the
a wrong
term
thing to do.
Zionist, right?
You can say that's a wrong thing to say, but he's not talking about Jews. He's talking about people who have exhibited these positive feelings, and that includes millions upon millions of Christians. More Christians.
Okay, well, listen,
than
I don't think
Jews
they're
exist in the
neo-Nazis,
world.
not fit to walk dogs, either. I think it's insane language.
Listen, you don't want to tell me that you have never engaged in hyperbole. You and I both are in this
It's not
business,
just
and we do that.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I just think that,
It's listen. You can say
I
it's
just
an
think
inappropriate
that,
thing
like,
to say. It's an unfair thing to say.
I just think like
but
Arabs
it's
that
not
support Israel aren't
anti-Semitism.
fit to walk a dog.
It is not anti-Semitism.
Okay, well, we're
And
at
you
an
can say
impasse
that
on
it's-
this one.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, but anyway, another thing he does is he says Zionist
Oh my God,
tendencies,
more?
and he's someone that plays around with Zionism. He calls me a Zionist, and again, I know we're arguing here about semantics of what Hasan said, but I don't think that you could accurately.
No, you are playing video. So he is responding to the video that you presented to him, to be completely clear. And he's telling you that there's a big danger when people conflate the idea that every single Jewish person is represented by the state of Israel. And he's trying to say that there's a clear distinction being made there. That to conflate them like you are doing right now is itself dangerous. And then, like, we're going right back in circles. Right afterwards, he's like, so that's why we should probably talk about the issues. But you don't know the other things that Hasan said. There's so
Characterize
many.
me as that, as it's used colloquially. You don't know, right? But he's saying Zionist tendencies. What does that mean? What's a Zionist tendency?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're going to talk to him on Friday. You can ask him what a Zionist tendency is. I suppose, I would guess, and, like I've looked at polls too, where, people have various different understandings of what Zionism is. But I think it is my guess, and I don't know what he was thinking specifically, but the notion of an ethno-state that engages and it allows whatever in the name of Zionism allows for this mass slaughter, I think is horrific.
Sure, me too.
Okay. I mean, then I think
But that's what's so important about this. That's why, like, even the very idea of being like, all right, Sam Cedar, you're here. We're going to have a conversation. I respect you. This is going to be really productive. I now want to show you clips about Hasan. And I want to talk about how dangerous it can be, what Hasan is specifically doing here, because what does he mean? What are the dog whistles? What is he really trying to say? And then Sam very clearly being like, I think this is dangerous. Because right now, if you want to contextualize what we're having, this discussion, this is taking place when there is a government, a state that is doing a genocide. And then we're now trying to make sure that people who criticize that state are doing it properly. And we're going to police that. We're going to make sure that are you really, truly, criticizing the government of Israel? Or are you saying that it's all Jewish people, which I think Hasan is doing in the following clips that I'm going to show you.
The three of us agree on that regard.
Yeah, I think another thing is like to take it even further. I mean, Hasan pretty much openly supports Hamas.
Let's not talk about Hasan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean, what do you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask me about, I mean,
well, let me.
I'm not here to explore.
Yeah. I have a list of things
but if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think. Look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the ANC terrorists.
What do you think about them, Sam?
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine, of Hamas that have done good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But I sort of feel, I guess, ultimately, probably like Ehud Barak, when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions. And I think that is that is an understanding of human nature.
That you're not affording Israelis, by the way, just to point out an inconsistency there.
They're the ones doing the genocide.
You're like, I refuse to understand human nature and their reaction. It's just evil, and I don't know how to explain it.
I didn't.
But you understand why I'm trying to empathize with our perspective.
Right. I'm inferring because I asked you if you think they're evil, and you didn't really answer that.
Listen, I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas, but I can tell you that, we have there is a long history of terrorist organizations or so-called terrorist organizations like the ANC or the IRA, even the PLO,
now, Sam,
that ultimately become a political organization.
I think the comparison to Hamas to what happened in South Africa is insanely disingenuous. And I personally hate when people do that.
I mean, Mandela didn't think so.
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he avoided committing violence on the citizenry because it would make reunification impossible. That's something he said.
I think you could say that
totality
and their
cause. By the way, Sam, in the totality of their campaign, I think under 200 civilians died. And the people who did kill civilians were almost all held accountable for what they did. That's a difference, Sam.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that.
A significant difference.
Well, it is a significant difference. I mean, I imagine many of those people who committed atrocities on October 7th are dead now. And, so.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's accountability.
Being
But
killed? Okay.
but
I mean being held accountable by the party that they're presumably doing the violence on behalf. Like,
but you're saying the entire ANC was held
But
accountable?
also the way you're trying to frame this right now, it's like if people are living in like an open air prison, if all their food, water, supplies are controlled by another government that is doing a colonial imposition upon them, why are we trying to empathize or sympathize with the government that is doing that to them? Right. And trying to find like, well, I mean, like how evil are the people in that ghetto, you know, in that part of the world where they are having all of their resources controlled. Their calories are literally being counted for them. How exactly are they behaving? Are they good people? Are they doing bad things? I mean, we should really talk about that.
No, it's saying Nelson Mandela's party, if someone killed a civilian, they would hold them accountable. They would charge them. They would disavow their actions.
The ANC did.
Yes.
Well, the IRA was bombing places in England and throughout Ireland. I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang when they killed over 100 villagers in 1948. I mean, the history is full of example of organizations that commit terrorist acts. Now, I will tell you,
people look at South Africa.
I do not condone the killing of civilians, which is why obviously I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure. The part that I don't like about people say, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, like, what do you expect, right? But the truth is that people use South Africa as an example, but what South Africa
but if you want to compare those two situations, we're talking about one in which the world and specifically the West started to reject the premise of an apartheid South Africa. They started, stopping doing business with them. They stopped doing any direct association. There was boycotts. There was a boycott and divest movement, which made sure that people weren't buying products that were manufactured in that part of the world to apply more and more pressure. There were sanctions. This was something in which, like, even Joe Biden himself at the time, if you listen to him, he sounds like a radical extremist as he's talking about this particular part of the world. This now is being compared to a situation in which we do have an apartheid state once again, but it has the direct both military and financial backing of the United States. So for you to put these two situations side by side, whereas the universal thing that we should all be talking about is that we should be opposing apartheid regardless of how it is structured or where it takes place in the world.
Is that you don't need to commit a violent war against civilians to liberate yourself.
Well, I mean, listen, we had for a year, we had the Great March of Return, where, Sinwar himself was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were innocent people who went there, and snipers are shooting down unarmed civilians. And so, time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally, covering this, my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like, the Warsaw Ghetto, insofar as, like, you don't have access to resources, you have 50% unemployment, the apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say.
But I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well, none of it's working out, is it?
Not much at all. Not really much at all.
What an unbelievably fucked up thing to say. That's one of the most fucked up things he's ever said. And how is that like an argumentation? Well, I mean, yeah. Look at Gaza now. All I gotta say, that strategy didn't really pay off, The greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years.
the notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well,
it's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is, there may have been a time where Zionism had and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside. Folks like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare for everyone involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in that type of immiseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again, Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a weapon were he one of them, and
that's fine.
He's far closer to the conflict than I am.
I'm not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons, right? So let me ask you this: what do you think about October 7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah,
I mean, it was horrific.
Mm-hmm. And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
We're getting into the condemn Hamas section.
I suspect. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't know if they were aware of that the dance.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening. I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the equation, where an authoritarian
you leave out that they
state.
attacked Kibbutzim, by the way.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they. I don't know what the strategy was on their part.
So what do you think? Like, would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day that Israel was going to respond.
Go insane.
I mean,
yeah, right. It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
Yes, but I think I think.
Sorry, but what is your point? What is he building to here? Because ultimately, like, it's genocide. That they are just literally scorching the earth. It's just like more than 3 nuclear bombs worth of explosives have been dropped in a highly concentrated area of a population of half children. Yeah, the most horrifying crimes against humanity that you can possibly imagine. Sorry. Are we framing this and then, I mean, Hamas kind of FAFO there, right?
The lack of proportionality was just beyond, frankly, and I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy, what is it, 90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb hospitals, that they would use
orphanages.
Well, Hamas did know that because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I was right. I'm horrified to say so, but yeah, Hamas. I mean, what did they really do there? That's like fucking victim blaming to the extreme, like turning to a bully and being like, "Why are you hitting yourself?" kind of shit.
I'm more interested in the justification for what they're doing.
Probably took hostages with the idea that they would be able to negotiate.
I understand why they took hostages. I don't understand why they took children and elderly.
I believe that they probably. I mean, this is all conjecture on my part. That they would be able to trade them as a way to inhibit Israel's doing what they're doing, and I don't know if they could have even imagined that. I'm not going I'm not going to endorse Hamas's strategy here.
Well, I'm just trying to flesh it out here because this is what I'm getting to is Hamas. I think they knew that this was the reaction that would happen. You know?
I can't imagine that they assumed that there would be this level of destruction.
I mean, that's why they hate Israel. I don't think they underestimate how violent the IDF can be. You know what I mean? That's why they attacked.
I certainly underestimated that they would go this far.
What is this defense?
I didn't think they'd go this far, but
bomb hospitals and shoot EMTs and have rules of engagement like this. I mean, and I think Hamas is certainly up to criticism for their strategy here.
If that's an understatement.
Well, I mean, if that's the
well, I mean, they're a terrorist organization that intentionally antagonized like the IDF to come mass slaughter their civilians.
I think that they overestimated whether Israel cared about the hostages, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know that there would be anybody who would make a case that this is what was their plan.
They're occupied.
To have Israel respond in this way. That's absurd.
Well, and the same is true of, like, I guess Israelis feel the same way. Like, it was totally unprecedented. You know what happened. So maybe they didn't think that their mission would be as successful as it was. On the other hand,
I have no doubt that they did not think that they would that they would have been able to overrun that. I mean, I think we were told that the technology of Israel's
this whole thing is like, look what Hamas made Israel do.
Perfect.
Can you believe what Hamas made Israel do?
Country. I mean, Trump was all talking
Hamas
about
is so
that.
evil for that.
So I have no doubt that Hamas underestimated.
Overestimated the IDF. Yeah, I got you.
What they would be able to, what kind of destruction they would wreak, and they underestimated the violence that Israel would perpetrate on Gaza. I don't know that anyone could have imagined that Israel would have engaged in this level of destruction and immiseration and bombing churches and bombing hospitals and blowing up universities and destroying the infrastructure. I mean, it's almost beyond belief.
So one thing that when I was talking to Hasan, and I'm just going to talk about his point. This is about him personally.
Back to Hasan.
When I asked him, because this is obviously the $1 million question, right?
If it's not Hasan, it's to condemn Hamas.
You know, there's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
There's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza?
Mm-mm.
What's your point here?
I just think that's interesting. It's pretty fucked up, don't you think?
Do I think it's fucked up?
I think dropping bombs on a population of half kids and doing a mass slaughter of children every day, where there are more children becoming amputees than any other part of the world right now, actively, is fucked up. Is worth condemning. Is worth talking about. Is worth using a platform to call out. Like, he was just getting mad at Hasan. He's like, oh, he's very irresponsible using his platform when he didn't actually directly endorse Kamala Harris, right? That's irresponsible using your platform. By the way, we should really be talking about, isn't it kind of fucked up that at the end of the day, what did Hamas do, right? I mean, this is all kind of Hamas's fault.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I understand the point. Like,
well, I mean, do you
think anything would be standing anymore?
Well, bomb shelters are underground. I mean, they would definitely be a lot safer.
I've seen what happened to tunnels under hospitals.
Your statement is, so you say there were tunnels under hospitals.
This is way worse on Ethan than
Israel
I thought it was going to be.
Built the ones.
I thought Sam was going to be friendly and he was going to have a friendly conversation.
The first one that they went into, they built it when they were occupying Gaza.
Are you right? That's true of that one. But I mean, they have a vast tunnel network, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't care. I don't want to get into weeds on this. The $1 million question is like, what can we do? Now, it's obviously insanely difficult to say.
As Americans, I think we can stop aid immediately. I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen under Trump.
I'm in favor of that. By
sanctions. Divest completely.
I mean, good.
I mean, I think
we should call for all aid to be ceased. And I think we should stop protecting them in the UN.
What should have Israel done on October 8th, I guess? Like, what would have been an appropriate response for their government?
I mean,
without saying not this. I don't know what. Truthfully, the situation is so fucked up that, and like, It just feels hopeless sometimes, but.
It certainly does. But in the meantime,
But, what with our massive platforms and all, we probably do have an opportunity to stop doing propaganda on the behalf of what Israel's doing by trying to reframe everything over and over and over around Hamas. We should really talk about the ultimate evil here, and that's Hamas. And Hamas made Israel do this, and it's really bad that Israel, obviously it's terrible. They're slaughtering kids at such a fast rate and all that kind of stuff, bombing hospitals, schools, orphanages. It's sad and tragic at the same time. But what did Hamas think was going to happen?
In this country, and we may not have the opportunity for a while, but we should cease all aid to Israel. We should stop protecting them in the UN. We should stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC, and that's
Well, incidentally, I agree with all those things too. I think that that's the most we can do as a country to try to stop the war.
So shouldn't
and
that
it's
be the
something
focus
that
then?
We should be doing.
Not Hasan.
And I think Kamala Harris would have been a lot more likely to do something on that
if it
front.
wasn't for Hasan.
Certain.
we won't know.
We can't know, and that's the great thing.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I gotta go because I'm supposed to have dinner for my child. But,
well, I'll say this. This was way more combative than I expected. Ultimately, though, I don't think that what do we disagree on? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. I don't know what's ultimately the disagreements here.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not. It's largely, in my mind, impossible to really fully assess. I mean, yes, there was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages back in the
ceasefire.
I don't know if there's been. Well, they wanted the hostages back. I don't know.
It's not a magic wand. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it, and they.
Well, so hold on. Our disagreements is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry.
I'm not here to adjudicate.
That seems to be your primary.
I'm just trying to summarize our conversation. That's all.
Well, I mean, you summarize for you. I'll summarize for me. I think that, it is what it is. And I think I don't remember this conversation. We can put into AI and have it summarize it, but I'll
do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says.
We can do.
We'll leave it to the robots.
With the transcript.
Okay.
Sam, I do appreciate you calling in. I do value your input on all this, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points we agree, but we managed to find things to fight about anyway, and that's what two Jews do, isn't it, Sam?
That happens. That's my understanding. Appreciate it. All right, take it easy, man.
Have a great time with your children at dinner there. Enjoy.
Thanks, I will.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Everyone's saying I'm so far behind. Yeah,
that was way different than I thought it was going to be.
Oh,
but okay.
Well, what do you think? It went exactly as I predicted. I was like, Sam is not going in there to try and be incredibly combative. He's going to try and reason with him, and he's going to try and find common ground, and he's going to be very patient. I just feels like this is the lane that Sam is going to pick because he's, discussing a very important topic with someone that has a massive platform that could be really beneficial, I'm sure, in Sam's eyes. And he's right in this. As much as I want to just always hate on what's happened to Ethan, it makes a lot of sense for Sam to look at this and be like, hey, if the 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 live viewers who are watching the H3H3 show actually start to recognize that this is something that we should all collectively be working towards, which is, again, end the occupation, end the genocide, divest, to impose sanctions upon Israel, a two-way arms embargo. That's more beneficial than us making a bunch of memes on the internet. And for a little while, I was going in that direction. It's just that Ethan kept pulling the whole thing back to Hasan. Hasan. I know you don't want to talk about Hasan. You've said that multiple times, but I do want to show you these clips of Hasan. So here's a bunch of clips of Hasan. Isn't it pretty intense that Hasan is basically saying all these terrible things about Jewish people? And at that point, Sam was like, he's not saying that about Jewish people. He's specifically targeting people who are pro-Israel and pro the government of Israel. And I want to make that distinction. And then, of course, yeah, like it's going to get very combative if you just kept on trying to replicate that issue. Like, you wanted to show him so many clips of Hasan. I could tell that they were already queued up and just ready to go. And like, it's probably right from that Barry Weiss article. And then just like in this clip, Hasan is saying that he considers Zionists to be, subhuman. What do you have to say about that? I mean, it's pretty intense, the language that he's using. And Sam was eloquent. Even if he was mad, he was just right on point. I think this is more dangerous, what we're doing right now. Like, this conflation of all Jewish people with the actions of Israel is something that I myself have had to deal with fighting. And I've had relatives who've called my relatives and asked them, is Sam Seder a pro-Zionist or an anti-Zionist so this is a real problem. And this problem is being manifested and propagated by the right wing in the United States, the majority of whom are Christian nationalists who are consistently trying to conflate the actions of Israel with all Jewish people. Look no further than that anti-Semitism bill that's about to be passed in the United States, where they've added provisions to give free speech protections to Nazis. It's like, yes, this is an anti-Semitism bill that is going to, directly call out anyone who's critical of Israel. But if there are Christian nationalists who want to say anti-Semitic statements like, I don't know, the Jews are responsible for the death of Jesus, we're going to add provisions to protect them. And it's like, well, yeah, because this bill isn't designed to target anti-Semitism and to target the neo-Nazis and the far right and the fascists who are anti-Semitic, who are racist, who do target Jewish people, who are going to say anti-Semitic things, like that sentence that they had a picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene on the article, I guess, to really reinforce that this is like a Marjorie Taylor Greene provision to make sure that she's still allowed to say all the racist and anti-Semitic shit she wants, but at the same time, anyone critical of Israel can meet the full might of the state, that kind of shit. So of course it's going to eventually lead to a lot of arguments, and it got worse. It got worse and worse as it went on. And Ethan was clearly trying to frame the whole thing as in this is really fucked up what Hamas did. And it's like, yes, but he's like, are you talking about October 7th? Or no, I'm talking about the response that Israel had post October 7th. Hamas had to know that this was going to be really bad. And it's like, that's such a fucked up victim blaming way of framing this whole thing. When ultimately it's like, should we not be condemning Israel for the genocide instead of saying, well, what did Hamas do? Like, how could Hamas have not known or had the foresight? It's so bad what they've done here, and really we should be talking about how evil they are just as an organization. We should focus on that. And what do you think, Sam? What's your opinion on that? Ethan trying to catch gotcha. Sam was so hard to watch, just time after time. It kept going in circles. It would be like, okay, well, I mean, all right, what do you think about October 7th? Very broad question. What do you mean? About what took place there, about the events, about the different stories that came out, about the way the media reported on it, the manipulation of the media, about the response, Yoav Gallant's statement that a week later that we are fighting human animals and we should be depriving them of all food, water, medicine. What part? Like, where do you want me to start on that? As we're again dealing with the situation during the course of this conversation, I think Sam was very sentient of this. How many kids have died, in the past hour? How many kids have been had their limbs amputated? How many people are burning right now as we speak? How many people are starving to death actively? That this is where we should be focusing and using our platforms. Again, if this is something he's so upset at Hasan for having the audacity to not openly endorse Kamala Harris in the middle of a genocide, as many people couldn't make the calculation openly and do the trolley problem to your liking. How dare he with his massive platform? He's kind of responsible, isn't he? Because I mean, if he had done as much as he could and gotten a certain percentage of voters to just grit their teeth and go into the booth, then maybe Donald Trump wouldn't be president right now, and maybe they wouldn't be talking about turning the Gaza Strip into the Riviera. And so that's kind of Hasan's fault. And it's like, why in the world are we choosing to use our platform for this? Is kind of the response, right? Like, of all the shit we could be talking about, and bring it. And if we're going to talk about this issue, which I agree is an incredibly serious issue, shouldn't we be doing everything in our power to stop a genocide, to end an apartheid state, to educate people on what is taking place there, to make sure that they themselves can recognize it for the horrors that it truly is, and then start enacting policies domestically. Like it doesn't matter what country you're watching me from right now. It's most likely, if it's a Western nation, that your government is complicit in this in some way. I can speak firsthand for Canada. We've been towing the line for so long where it's like, we wouldn't do a two-way arms embargo. Then there was finally, okay, we're going to do a one-way arms embargo. And now they're trying to imply that one-way arms embargo is sufficient, when it's like all we're doing in Canada is selling our bombs and weaponry. Well, sorry, not bombs, the technology used to drop the bombs, to the States. So we're not actually not selling that same tech to Israel. We're just selling it through the U.S., which is then selling it to Israel. So Canada is the noble country that took a really strong stand after immense pressure from its own populace that didn't want to be part of this fucking slaughter anymore. Like that.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.